if they are able to hear us or even see us well. We just wanted to go ahead and make sure that we start off every live with that disclaimer because anything can happen on live. We just want to make sure that anybody in the chat room, if they can hear us or see us, we appreciate it. And I'll be monitoring the chats for comments and for questions. Today is a very, very, very huge episode. Alrighty, let's see what we got here.
And Jerome, while you're checking that, I just want to for the people who already listen, I just want to introduce Megan Keller. She's a community activist, and not just in one area. She's a community activist on cases across the nation. I'll let her introduce herself here. Meg, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself while we're waiting to get started?
Yes, good evening. My name is Meg Keller. I'm a legal consultant specializing in complex cases of incarceration, police officer involved shooting, and jail debts. Um, and Clayton County is near and dear to my heart, so I thank you guys both for having me on tonight.
All right, we're happy to have you on. Can't wait to hear your perspective on this stuff.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, let's see.
Pretty good, huh?
Alrighty, give one more minute before we start here. Make sure that
Sure.
all the good folks are here. Seeing if anybody can see us and hear us. Waiting for a question to come through. Hey, you get any heat advisories up there? Because I just came back.
Really? What
Yeah.
you getting over there?
No, I mean, it seems warm here, but it seems warmer than it here than it does in than it did in Jamaica.
In Jamaica?
Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah, yeah. Okay, all
That's
righty.
very interesting.
Some people have heard us, so for no other reason, let's keep it going. So I'm gonna keep the party going. So, all right, today's episode um, takes us to Clayton County, Georgia, once again, where an explosive lawsuit that is shaking the foundation of child protection at this moment. As we covered here for a few episodes, a 13-year-old girl was placed in state care only to be sexually abused inside the very shelter meant to go ahead and keep her safe. And now the allegations go far beyond just one predator. You know, the lawsuit that it was just announced last week claims that DFCS, the Rainbow House Shelter, and even the Clayton County District Attorney's Office were a part of a cover up, not just negligence. So, this is all what we call intentional silence. And the most disturbing part was that some of the people named were in positions of leadership and trust. And we've talked about that in several instances on this show. So, this isn't just about justice for one girl. This is about asking where are the others that were ignored, silenced, or shut up or betrayed. So that's what we have today. With me, of course, we have retired Sheriff Victor Hill, and we have Megan visiting us today too. So, brother, that was an explosive lawsuit. Um, Even throwing in a RICO portion of this on a civil matter, which is not common. And so, I mean, kudos for everybody that's on here and the past guests that we've had to bring awareness to this situation.
True.
That's what this channel is about. That's what you fight for. That's what I fight for, and thus, it has now taken traction to the point with uh, in a huge lawsuit. I can't put it into context. See if you can.
Well, Jerome, like you said, we've had several guests on the show. We had Katrina Holloway, who actually used to be the administrative assistant for Chairman Jeff Turner. We had a former commissioner, Felicia Franklin, who actually served on the board of commissioners. They both came with a set of facts, brought receipts, and was able to tie this thing in. The sad part about this whole thing is this goes to show how the system can fail when you have the fox guarding the hen house. So something like this should never go on. And if it comes to the district attorney's attention, if it comes to the chairman, which is the equivalent of being a mayor, who's also a former police chief, it it should have stopped right then and there. But it didn't. Why? Because of relationships. The district attorney was friends with Mia Kimber, put her in that position. The district attorney was the acting chair of the board for the Rainbow House, so she was directly involved in hiring and firing. And you know, and then you got the director's son, who's responsible for a lot of this molestation. And when we got the details for folks who haven't seen that show with Holloway and Franklin, I mean, the district attorney in some ways was complicit, actually going out of town with Mia Kimber, her son, and one of the victims, or maybe more victims for all we know. What's interesting about this is there's a lot of John Does in this lawsuit. You're gonna know who those John Does are.
Yeah.
Meg, what you thinking? Meg, what's your thoughts?
I think this is a long time coming. Yes, I think this is a very long time coming. I think that there's been a lot of people behind the scenes that's put forth an enormous amount of effort whenever it comes to really outing the corruption within Clayton County. This is going to be interesting to watch. I think that they will end up with criminal charges before it's over with. There's so much nonfeasance and just failing to act on so many people's behalf that I really hope that somebody does jail time, especially, whoever was in charge. Which the lawsuit says who was in charge, guys. So
yeah, honestly, they did. They left no bones about that.
So for people to have an understanding, Jerome, would you play one of the news clips that was played after this RICO lawsuit was filed, naming not just Mia Kimber and her son, but naming the district attorney Tasha Mosley and former chairman Jeff Turner?
All right, let's take a look at this.
A teenager says she was a victim of sexual abuse at a Clayton County shelter. Atlanta News First reporter Chelsea Bonfor is live at 5 outside the Rainbow House that's in Jonesboro. So Chelsea, that place is no longer in operation, right?
Yeah, Tracy, it closed down after a state investigation, which eventually led to an employee being convicted of raping a 15-year-old girl here. Now another victim is coming forward, and her attorneys say they believe there are several victims still out there.
These are children that, by and large, come from very vulnerable situations.
Attorney Brian Sutliff shared this photo of his client, a teenage girl hiding under the bed after allegedly enduring months of abuse at a Clayton County shelter. He calls it a trauma response.
During her time there, she was sexually and physically abused relentlessly.
The teen spent several months at the Rainbow House in Jonesboro after being placed into state custody. The facility housed at-risk youth, but Sutliff says employees preyed on his clients and others. After a state investigation, at least one employee, Caleb Randolph, was convicted of raping a 15-year-old girl staying at the same shelter last year. The lawsuit filed Thursday names Randolph, other Rainbow House employees, a local church, Clayton County, and the Clayton County District Attorney. Tasha Mosley previously served on the board of directors for the Rainbow House, but says she, quote, categorically denies any allegations of wrongdoing and says she had not been a board member for months when she learned about the allegations of sexual abuse.
We're representing one victim. We know that there are many more victims, and we would encourage them to come forward. This young woman has had her life destroyed, and she deserves to be compensated, and the wrongdoers and all the people that could have stopped this deserve to be held accountable.
District Attorney Mosley also added that these, quote, baseless allegations against her have already been dismissed several times in federal court. We are working to figure out which cases she's referring to. Live in Clayton County, Chelsea Bonfor, Atlanta News First.
What is she talking about?
So let me tell you this, okay? I'm glad we played that news clip because I want you to hear this carefully. I was aware of a lawsuit that was filed against her. It was filed by an individual, and it was in federal court.
Mhm.
And what really caught my interest when that case was filed is what judge it handled it. It was Judge Ross. You're familiar with Judge Ross because you came to my sentencing. That was a judge that handled my case.
Mhm.
Remember, that's also the judge that's friends with Tasha Mosley. Katrina Holloway confirmed that in her interview. And also a judge that was Facebook friends with one of my political opponent, and also a judge whose husband used to work for Tasha Mosley. So remember, my case was rigged from the beginning, and we brought that out when we were covering my case. So it was ironic to me that of all people,
Mm.
this case went to that judge. And I was sitting back wondering how that was going to turn out because I knew that wasn't good, and it got dismissed. Now, that lawsuit was filed by an individual. And of course, judges can come up with any type of excuse to dismiss a individual. But just like that judge did not recuse herself from my case, knowing all of the things that she was involved in and the people that she was connected to in Clayton County, she didn't recuse herself from this case, and she dismissed it. So that's pretty interesting. And it's interesting how that stuff works down there, because you think when you're dealing with the feds, at least back during that time under that administration, you think you're dealing with strictly professionals. But this judge is actually assigned to one of my civil cases after all of this and all of the stuff we put out out on her.
Mhm.
And even with the stuff that we saw that was connected between her and my case and the Chrisley's case. So it's not surprising that that judge dismissed it, seeing that there's a relationship with her and Tasha Mosley. So I wanted to make sure we get that out. Now, let me add this. Here's what's fascinating about this case as well. This case was filed in state court. Now, very, very interesting. This is a reputable law firm. We looked them up, we researched them. It's obviously they know what they're doing. It's just not some fly by night lawyers or whatever like the DA. And so they actually filed it in state court. And I don't know the strategy behind it, but let me tell you what I love about it. That means that the jury has to come from Clayton County. And a Clayton County jury gets to hear and see how the person who serves as their district attorney is complicit in this case. What's going to be very, very interesting too is, this case is going to people are going to have to be deposed. So a lot of people are going to have to be deposed. And all of those John Does are going to have to be deposed. Now think about this. Jeff Turner was the chairman, and he's naming this lawsuit. And remember, we got an eyewitness that saw him take the complaint that was sent by the whistleblower and throw it into the trash can. Also, keep in mind, Mia Kimber has yet to go to trial.
Right.
Her son is serving a 30-year sentence. She's yet to go to trial. She's still out on bond and was supposed to go to court for a misdemeanor cruelty to children, which we spoke about as very, very suspicious. How do you have all these felony charges and then all of a sudden, which I think common sense shows that Tasha Mosley was trying to plead her out to a misdemeanor and send her home so she doesn't have to go to prison.
Right.
Then there was a bench warrant when she didn't show up, a bench warrant that's yet to be served. If you look on the court dockets now, she's rescheduled to go back to court next month. And there's some type of motion for enclosed, which, I don't want to speak as an expert on what that means, but you can already see the shenanigans of trying to cover it up.
Yeah.
I think that Kasha has a good reason to not want Mia to go to prison, because Mia goes to prison, she may start talking about her involvement, talking about the trips they took and the trips they took with some of these
It
kids.
won't matter now. The lawsuit's here.
I agree. I
And
agree.
now deposed. And now,
I agree.
guess what? Everyone's going to be every person for themselves.
I totally agree.
Right.
And I can tell you, word on the street is people have already started coming forward in the last 3 days.
Mhm.
And that who would be surprised about that?
Right.
And who knows how many victims there are further that will come forward.
Right.
But word is on the street that additional victims and additional people who have knowledge of it are coming forward. Think about this. Tasha named a lot of people who work for her to sit on that board, a lot of people who were friends with her to sit on that board, who are other elected officials. They're going to be disposed as well, too. And the main thing that's very interesting is Tasha made the statement to the news. She didn't get on camera, but she made the statement to the news saying something to the effect of, I wasn't even on the board when I found out about that.
Right. It was
Okay.
a while ago.
Go
Right.
ahead, Jerome. The
She had been gone.
timeline, we already have the
Right.
timeline that shows
It
that's a
doesn't make
lie. So she
sense.
just impeached herself to the
Right.
media. It'll
Right.
be interesting to see if she'll impeach herself under oath.
Yeah. I think what she'll try to go ahead and say that, hey, guess what? I wasn't actively serving on, even though I may have been on
There's
there.
tax documents that show otherwise, though. I'm
Absolutely.
just saying.
Right.
And also there's going to be proof that she took herself off the board after this thing started to blow up to separate herself from it.
Yeah.
So, it's one thing to, you expect people to say they categorically deny, or they are, like in the words of Jeff Turner, when he increases vocabulary, I vehemently deny. Okay, so they say that. But when you start making statements like that, that shows, and this is a lawyer, she should know better
She
than
should,
to
right?
make, right, she should. So that shows you the level of DA that we have in Clayton County, because she didn't even have enough sense to not make any statements about the case, but just go ahead and make some basic denial statement or whatever.
Right.
One thing, when people are innocent, they act a whole lot differently than when they're not. If you're innocent, you don't mind getting on a podcast or getting on whatever and talking. I talk about my case all the time because I know I'm innocent, and I'll talk about it to the day I lie, but to the day I die. But you get folks like this, and they don't want to get on camera now, and they just come up with this generic stuff. I'd love to hear her side of the story. I'd love to have her on this show.
Yeah. That'll
Yeah,
never happen.
yeah,
But yeah, of course.
exactly. But hey, the invite is there.
Right.
Right.
Here,
But go ahead, Jerome.
no, what brings back me to more to what Megan was saying at this point, now we have the lawsuit and people are going to get deposed now. That means, oh my goodness, it will born out what's going to be born out of that are criminal charges. I
Right.
just,
It has to be. Yeah,
yeah,
there would
there
be no
has to
other
be,
way around
right?
it.
At this point in time, I mean, at this point in time, what you're probably trying to do, or what you should be doing at this point in time, is going to your car, signing it off to your mother, to your house, signing it
Getting a
off.
power of attorney, signing
Yeah,
over your estate.
exactly. That's what you need to be doing at this point.
And to point out
Right.
as well, from a legal standpoint, not only is she violating her oath of office, but she also is violating her ethical standards as an attorney
Yeah.
and in that position of power. So anybody that she's wronged whatsoever, they can go to the Georgia Bar license website. You just Google it, go in there and make a bar complaint. That's one way we can always stand up for ourselves as well, while this civil lawsuit goes through, the joys of court, unfortunately, for all these young kids.
Another thing we got to look to see is it what I call the Diddy effect, not comparing apples to oranges, because this is apples to oranges. And let me tell you why. We're talking about kids now. We're not talking about adults and trying to figure out whether it was consensual or not. Kids can't give consent. So this is worse. But remember, what started with Diddy started with a lawsuit.
Oh, yeah.
Then the feds got involved, and then it got criminal. Of course, we know that back when she was doing all this other stuff, obviously she had connections down there or whatever like that. But those folks aren't there anymore now.
Right.
And the question is, once this lawsuit gets going, when depositions start coming out, and people who are really concerned about fighting real crime see what happened, we could well see this go from civil to criminal, because I don't think this new administration is going to play with DAs like this. I really don't, and they shouldn't.
Yeah. So
Right.
you got courts and legal analysis about this, and Megan, you can step in at any point in time what I'm about to say, but most of these civil RICO filings, target businesses, labor unions, all types of civil disputes, and so on and so forth. This is wild, because what they're estimating about, if you're taking a look at this, 90% of the civil RICO cases involve private business matters. Now you're doing it for the you're doing it for the entire district attorney's office. You're doing it for heads of former county commissioners. I mean, wow, wild stuff there.
Right. And one thing to add is what makes it so different as well as anything that we've heard of up until this point is the fact that not only did she oversee, it's going to be hard for her to weasel out of this lawsuit because she's the pure, like the number one oversight. She overseen everything in her position as the board chair. But they also was able to get able to acquire state grant money.
Mhm.
So now you're taking money that's not really, you're not doing the job of the business operations and how it's supposed to be ran. So how does that come into play? Like there's definitely a lot of things to think about in this situation.
Well, I'm glad because what you just said right now leads to what Molly Motivates is talking about. If the kids were taken out of town, did they leave the state? The answer is yes, and let me go ahead and put that back up there. Will the feds pick up the case? They can. This is
They
something
definitely
that
can
can be
once
born
you
out
cross
of that.
state lines.
Yes,
Right. 100%.
absolutely. I mean, of course, with this civil lawsuit, we don't know how that's going to be born out of that. Will it be this? The state takes part of this, GBI takes over on handling this. That's where I would think would happen
And
first.
there was this new law for district attorney oversight in Georgia. So
Right.
I'm curious to see how this will play out as well with them, because it's supposed to be this whole little group of like overseers of district attorneys. So yeah, there's definitely oversight over her, and I'm curious to see how it turns out.
Yeah,
Meg,
go
I'm
ahead.
glad you brought that up because I'm sure this is something they're going to be interested in, and I hope that all of the victims that are coming forth, all of the people who are coming forth as witnesses, I hope that they all make a complaint with that particular oversight for district attorneys as well, so that they could get involved because they actually have the power to remove district attorneys.
Hmm.
And this is big. Usually problems like this is solved with voters, but this is can't be solved with voters right now. First of all, there's still 3 years and a few months left on this particular term. So
Right.
think about this: we got a DA that's overseeing cases, other child molestation cases. But how can you really trust her to prosecute crimes?
Right.
When she didn't prosecute this and she covered it up, like Meg said, it's a violation of oath as a DA what she did. Uh Technically for Jeff Turner, it's probably a violation of oath because he was an elected official.
Hmm.
He had oversight over the police, who he could have easily said, I want this investigated and investigated now.
Hmm.
Fortunately, he's not in office anymore, but Tasha still is. And a lot of times when you find out that a cop has done something corrupt, a lot of times DAs, believe it or not, we're talking about a DA here, will look at all of the cases that these folks prosecuted and say, well, maybe we shouldn't prosecute this person because this person is now in question. Well, now we got the DA of the county in question, and then we got a DA that you got to understand picks and chooses who to prosecute. Because there's more to this story, and a lot of it is in my book. The book doesn't even just talk about the Rainbow House, but you got to understand with Jeff Turner, Katrina Holloway was already on the show and showed that he had involvement with Roman United, African Children Fund, scams that we knew that money was funneled, scams that usually who do you go to investigate that? The DA. But you can't go to the DA on Jeff. Why? Because they're friends. Then
Right.
you got Katrina Holloway, who spoke about this on the show, was arrested for a fake letter that Jeff Turner wrote, but she was given the fall for it. And the way she told the story, it wouldn't be hard to believe that Turner and Tasha Mosley was involved in it because she said Tasha called her a week or so before asking her, hey, can you call the feds to see if we can get his bond revoked? Next thing
Right.
you look, you got this letter being written. So she didn't prosecute him for that, but was cool with Katrina Holloway being prosecuted, and then tried to send word to her, hey, just play crazy and we might can get you off on being mentally insane, to
Right.
cover up another crime, with her friend. So it all makes sense. Why would Jeff Turner not help her cover this up when it's her friends and she's involved?
Mhm.
That's conspiracy.
Exactly. And maybe that's why we're dealing with a RICO charge here, you know?
Right, 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 right.
But also for the federal stuff, they're both in violation of their it's public abuse or abuse of color of law, or it's a
Mhm.
violation under color of law.
Now you're right. Now Just Curry has a good point there. You
Yeah, he
know,
does.
that's what we're waiting to see. And that's why we're encouraging people to go to that oversight committee of DAs. She shouldn't be.
Right.
But you know, again, we're dealing with a situation here where the fox is guarding the hen house. The
Mhm.
very person that we're supposed to go to handle stuff like this, the very person we're supposed to go to protect our children, protect us, is the one involved and
Right.
the one that is covering it up. So, but
Hmm.
you're right. She shouldn't be there now. She shouldn't be.
Right,
There's no way that not that she was effectively operating the office anyway,
right.
but
Hmm.
there is no way there's going to be so much public distrust
Mhm.
as it should be.
Right.
And
Hmm.
there's already so many cases that she's involved in that's shaky, not well handled,
Yeah.
and you just can't tell.
Yeah, yeah. And
Right.
I would go ahead and say this too. The better part of valor on her part would have been to recuse herself in so many different instances. She did not. You know, if people
Exactly.
had the
Failed to do
confidence,
so. Right.
right? If the
Mm.
people had the confidence to say, hey, guess what? I could go to my DA and I know if there is some type of tethered relationship between them and another public official, then they'll recuse themselves and send it to somewhere else. That
Right.
hadn't happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, she doesn't
Absolutely.
care about that part of it, I don't think.
Yeah, well,
I
That's
really,
true.
yeah.
this and the beauty of this is this civil lawsuit is delicious on this way. Okay, you at the well, first of all, we talk about the criminal process, you know, and you have to, of course, be guilty over or beyond a reasonable doubt. Right? That's not the standard with the civil process. So
Hmm.
there's a little bit of a lower threshold, and they're in trouble. They are in some trouble.
That's an
And you
understatement.
know, I just remembered something too. Uh Tasha is not just lying about not being on the board when all this was happening, but she's also lying about that lawsuit too. That lawsuit was dismissed, yes, and it was dismissed by Judge Ross, but it was a totally different lawsuit than the one that's now. Totally different. So for
There's
her to
two
say
federal
that,
lawsuits on
right,
paper, and yeah, neither of them are anywhere close to
anywhere
anywhere.
close
No,
to this, it's not the same lawsuit. So she's being very misleading. You know, I got a strange feeling that, you know, there's going to be a rush to settle this case. So let me tell you why.
hmm
I don't think Tasha or Jeff wants all these people to be deposed,
I agree.
because once these folks start being deposed, not just Mia Kimber, who can just like that bring this whole thing down,
Hmm.
but once all of that comes out, it's going to make them so much implicit, not just in this, but other things, that there's
Hmm.
no way to survive. You know, remember, even with the P. Diddy case, you notice how quick that case got settled. Now, it still ended up leading to criminal charges, but he knew he didn't want to go through depositions and stuff like that.
Yeah, he
You know,
paid Cassie out. I think it was like within one day.
exactly,
That,
exactly. Now, in government, it can't move that fast. There's going to be a lot of legal questions about the representation of Jeff Turner now that he's not in office or
Mhm.
whatever like that. We see that question: did Jeff really write the letter? He did. Make sure you watch that show with Katrina Holloway and how they tried to get her to take the fall for it. But
Mhm.
but let me tell you, there's a lot of stuff that would come out in that deposition that they don't want to.
Mhm.
So
Damaging, very damaging.
exactly, damaging, criminal, everything else. So don't be surprised if there's not a rush to try and get this case settled before it gets to that point.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. But you know, if I'm thinking about what the cyclists are doing on that end of it, they're coming. It'd be interesting if we can get those attorneys on. Um, and of
Mhm.
course, not to talk about the entire strategy of
Right.
what they're doing, but I would think that they have. The, I think that they're just about as methodical as they can be, and they're really going to try to go ahead and say, "Hey, guess what? Not only are we coming at you in a civil way, but we're exposing this because we believe also that this needs to be, handled in the criminal courts."
Mhm.
And you don't do that without, you don't just don't bring this type of lawsuit like this without having an understanding that it will come to this point.
Oh, absolutely. You could read this lawsuit and how it's written, and you could tell that this is not no fly by night law firm. This is
No,
not no fly by
definitely
night
not.
attorney, like what we're dealing with in Clayton County. You could tell just by looking at stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? The quality of it, kind of like I made a statement about the district attorney. You could tell what type of district attorney you got by if they try cases or not, or if they have a history of trying cases. If you see a district attorney out and they can't even speak to the media, but they got to read verbatim, it lets you know this is not a trial attorney. You're dealing with low level. Unfortunately, it does. I'm not saying that it's easy to pass a bar, but a lot of people can pass tests, and that doesn't necessarily make them capable attorneys. You
Right.
know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Because if that's
Right.
the case, then just passing the bar, we should be able to produce a lot of F. Lee Baileys. And we definitely don't have we don't even have a fictional Perry Mason for a DA right now in Clayton County. So,
Mhm.
Mhm.
I was looking over this lawsuit. There's a lot here, but there's something else I want to share on the show that I think which just lets you know that there's a serious problem. We know how credible this is. There was a report that was done by the a Senate investigation, I believe, and let me tell you what it says. It says an investigation by OCA into Rainbow House, a group home in Jonesboro where children in defects custody resided, found that there had been multiple complaints of sexual abuse that were not adequately investigated. On March 14, 2023, the Clayton County Police Department Human Trafficking Unit received an anonymous tip about misconduct occurring at the Rainbow House. The police investigated and arrested 4 Rainbow House employees, including the executive director's son, who was charged with statutory rape, sexual abuse, and molestation on March 16th. According to the news and media reports, the executive director knew about her son's misconduct and failed to report it, rehiring him instead. Remember, all of this coincides with the fact she couldn't rehire her without Tasha, who was on the board. It
Mhm.
says more victims came forward shortly afterwards. DFAC suspended Rainbow House from receiving new placements on March 15, 2023. OCA investigated and found that there had been multiple complaints of sexual abuse to DFACs before staff was arrested. A
Mhm.
heavily redacted memorandum regarding Rainbow House prepared by DFACs and provided to the subcommittee includes a section titled Recent Cases, Similar Concerns Timeline. But all information under that heading is redacted. DFACs recused requests from the subcommittee to narrow the redactions, citing confidentiality laws, denying the subcommittee evidence regarding prior reports of sexual abuse at the Rainbow House, and refused to answer questions from the subcommittee about whether there have been prior complaints of sexual abuse at the Rainbow House on the same grounds. DSH informed the subcommittee via email that in addition to Rainbow House, DFAC substantiated sexual abuse of foster children at the following group homes from 2018 to 2022. And then it named everything, including the Rainbow House. And that was in a judiciary abuse and neglect of children in Georgia's foster care system, a case study. So they have already corroborated much of what these attorneys are suing on. And I see, hey, welcome. We got former Commissioner Felicia Franklin. Welcome. Happy to have you here. She has a lot of institutional knowledge on it as well. I don't know how much you heard of what we've discussed thus far, but that's saying that came from a judiciary committee. and they weren't even cooperating with them.
Right.
So can you imagine once all these people are deposed, how much far implications there are for the DA and the former chairman, Jeff Turner?
Oh yeah.
Commissioner Franklin,
Hey,
welcome.
how are you all? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Let's
Happy to
just
have
say
you.
I'm going to leave the world of technology and just keep doing what I do, because being my own technical person, I may
Yes.
not be.
No,
I'm the same way. I feel you completely.
no problem. Happy to have you. I guess you didn't
Mhm.
get a chance to hear a lot of what we've been talking about, but I tell you what, to bring you in and to let you get started,
Mhm.
Jerome, why don't you show? There's an event coming up in Clayton County next month. Why don't you put that up so we can get the commissioner's thoughts on it and Megan Keller's thoughts on it?
I think a
Mhm.
lot of people are going to be ticked off by this, but yeah, let me go ahead and put
Yeah.
this up.
Go right ahead. All right, let me read that to everybody. It says a non-transferable invitation. Save the date, Thursday, August 28th, 2025. Clayton County's first African American police chief, Jeffrey E. Turner. Road dedication, unveiling, 11 a.m. at the and it's going to be located at Truett Caffey Professional Learning Center, 1087 Battle Creek Road, Jonesboro.
Who was the asshole that thought that that was a good idea?
Now, Brother Jerome, I could always count on you to keep it straight. Can you all hear me? I laugh, but it's not funny. So let me just say this is the second time this has come up. It came up once before while I was still active and in office. And while I was active and in office, these people didn't even realize that you can't even give a sitting person that is actually serving a street named after them. It just does not work, people. So at the time, yeah, the board, including myself, made sure that we set a resolution forward so that certain folks can know. But at the end of the day, this is put on by the state representatives, and so they're going to be pushing this forward. I come from a place where I grew up in Miami, Florida. They're no longer allowed to name anything after anyone that's living any longer. You just can't do it. And it actually came about because of the whole Art Teal situation. I was working for the government there. And unfortunately, for those who do not know, Art Teal was an amazing representative, actually. He represented the area well. However, unfortunately, because of the pressures of politics, he ended up taking his own life right there in the lobby of the newspaper, the Miami Herald. So
Oh,
after
wow.
that time, it was determined that in Miami, Florida, no one else would be able to have any streets named after them. Whether it's a street, whether it's a bridge. But for some reason, I noticed that in Clayton County, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal for them, as opposed to standing by the work you've done. I guess it's one of those things to where nothing's done until you see your name in lights, quote unquote. But it's a shame for those who are putting this on, because it's very unfortunate that, as one who really should be protecting the children, both he and the current DA decided not to be the mandated reporter that they are required to be. So even though I laugh, it's unfortunate.
It
It's
is.
unfortunate.
I
So
mean,
I'm gonna come with a little different perspective, Jerome. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
but
go
I
ahead.
got it. I got to do this one. So I agree with you, Commissioner. But okay, but let's look at it from this way. I don't
Mhm.
mind seeing a person get their flowers while they live in. We got a representative, Rhonda Beno, and sweet lady. Once she figured out she could name roads after people, she's been naming roads after everybody. And some of these people did some good work. And but let me tell you this. I believe in giving people their flowers while they're living, but I think to the people who ride through Clayton County every day like I do, the people who inbox me, the
Mhm.
when you look at the condition of the county today, that he was the leader for the last 12 years. When you looked at the fund
Mhm.
balances is in a $10 million deficit. When you look at the the most decent restaurant you could take your family to right now is probably Carrabba's, right? Red
Mm.
Lobster clothes. When you look at all of this, no development, no anything, the financial condition, then also, you know, like we discussed before the commissioner came on, you know, it's not just the Rainbow Houses guy covered up. It's not just him writing a fake letter trying to make sure it can't make it look like it came from me. This guy was involved in scams like the United U- Roman United, the African Children Fund, which the commissioner can tell you a funny story about that. Because when she went to go find the office, it was in a trailer park, a rundown trailer park,
Mhm.
but yet he funneled over $1 million and some dollars to this nonprofit that nobody could get on the phone to actually do what they were doing. When you look at
Mhm.
all of that, then you put on top that he's complicit with children getting molested and him helping to cover that up. This ain't the type of guy you want to name a road after. I get the strange feeling that there'll probably be protesters at that road naming, and there'll probably be a lot of child advocates.
Mm.
Because I mean, if we're going to name a road after him, we might as well name a road after Freddy Cougar.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
let me say this to that, sheriff. To be quite honest with you, I get what you were saying. So, but I want to go back to why, just for the sake of this, the reason that a lot of places do not allow roads to be named after folks because they still have an opportunity to run. So, what are you going to do? Pull the sign back down? That doesn't make sense. We're just talking about pure by the law, nothing else. And it's kind of hard, but I will say there has been some development, but it's been development that is done because of the citizens of District 3 pushing it forward, absent of him getting in the way. So I really can't just sit by and say there's no development, because then that'll be reflecting bad on me in my term as a commissioner. But this is not about me. This is about a man who's done, I don't know what he has done other than cover up a lot of things, as you stated, about the misuse of funds, the audit that we had requested, the fact that the county is in the worst financial shape that it has ever been under his tenure. I think that, along with the children alone, is enough to say, no, this should not be done. Not only that, it's because of the fact that now you got a lawsuit coming up. So this lawsuit is still yet to be determined of what the outcome is going to be. And so you're going to name a street after this person. So I disagree. And I hate to say it, Jerome, I agree with you. Whose grand idea it was, and it was one of our state representatives, I guess. And I'm going to say this, I guess because in the state of Georgia, they feel they don't have any pull for any votes. This is the only way they probably can get some type of attention to come to them and the
that's
people around. I
that's
really want to
terrible.
keep this germane on the Rainbow House.
Mhm.
We have to understand, regardless of these players, people who were entrusted to make the right decisions and to keep children safe did not. That's number one. The DA, secondly, she put people on that board that I am quite sure that if they knew that she had taken her name off of that, the document through the state of Georgia as the chair of the board, that they would not be happy. So obviously, if you got to remove your name as the chair of a board and then continue to conduct the business of the board, if that doesn't scream cover up, I don't know what does. And the third thing is to say, I saw the comment. This blew my mind. I got to take a breath on this one. This blew my mind. The comment was, those things happened after my tenure. So which one is it? Is it when you took your name off and continued to conduct the meetings? Or was it after your tenure during the time when you realized there was an issue because you all hired this dude back? Which one is it? Can you choose which one it is? Because the truth of that matter is you've just purged yourself, because it's written and it's stated. So unless you're going to watch this podcast and go back and say, oh, like some people that I know some folks love and say, oh, I misspoke. That's not good enough. Children's lives are changed, and you can't run from that. You cannot run from that. You did not do your part. All you did was stand behind a group of individuals that had to report to the two folks in that county that just didn't know how to represent children as they should have. That is a crime within itself.
Well, for sure.
Well,
For sure.
hey, well said. I don't have a rebuttal for that one.
Well,
And
one of the things I do.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
That
it
makes a lot
does.
of sense. That's why you wait till people die, because they may run for office again. That makes a lot of sense.
And the other part of that too is, well, yeah, you got that situation too. But even when death, some people's reputation still changes. You know,
I agree.
so people can
I
have,
agree.
and this is why you don't name a street, you don't go ahead and name a building or anything like that. And that's why in U.S. law, they really frown upon that. And
Yes,
if you
yes,
see right all over the place, especially with our history, we have a
yes.
lot of dedications, in streets and monuments named for some pretty hideous individuals,
Hmm.
where we had to say, hey, guess what? N- we know what they did. Let's go ahead and name it something else in that sense. You see
Well,
that?
Jerome, if you want to get technical on that, I'm glad you brought up about the laws. They bless their hearts. Reading is fundamental. Training is fundamental. But if that road is actually a state road or a federal road, then they may not even know that they're violating laws, as you just stated.
How
It's
about
just
one
sad.
more on top of that?
Hmm.
How about you have to change it after something explosive like this
Hmm.
happens, and you do find yourself under
Hmm.
other side of this, and then you get the criminal indictments. So now, I
Hmm.
mean, there ain't nobody around here having Jerry Sandusky Avenue, you know,
Yeah.
or no, they're not doing that, or
Well,
Jeffrey Dahmer
they did
place.
have things named after him in the statue, but they had to pull it down.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
had to
And it's
pull
yeah,
it
the
down.
same
Yeah.
with Art Teal. I'm glad you brought that up.
yeah. No,
They
nobody
had to
has
remove it.
Jeffrey Dahmer place, and then they have 3 Waffle Houses right down the street. No, nobody has that. Come on now, quit playing.
It's
Yeah, you're
sad.
right. And
It is really
and the sad
sad.
part about it, when you that poster, it talks about him being the first black police chief. Okay.
Hmm.
It leaves out that he also got fired.
That's
And
true.
and got fired for some pretty interesting reasons, putting a track on his wife's car to see who she was seeing. It's all kind of weird stuff
This was
that
JT.
really, yeah, him.
It goes
And you're
along with the
right.
character, though, at the end of the
Yeah.
day,
And it was
of the person.
interesting how there were no federal charges or anything brought against him. But it wasn't like this was some great tenure where it was, years of crime fighting and low crime and whatever like that. I mean, and I'm not trying to be personal, but the dude was a horrible police chief and a horrible leader. He just was. And I mean, this is a guy that, I mean, it just was. I mean, even when we were patrolmen, it was just, he was a scary patrolman. I mean, I remember one time he and I was trying to jump a lady off, and I handed him the jumper cables, and he was off the car because he said he was afraid of jumper cables. Let's get back to child molestation. I'm just saying that to honor this guy for being a police chief when he wasn't even a great police officer
Mhm.
is crazy. But let's get back to the subject with these kids. We got kids that not only got molested, but continued to be molested for a year because this former police chief,
Hmm.
the sitting DA, the sitting chairman,
Hmm.
failed to do what they
Hmm.
should have done. And why? Because the DA is complicit. She's friends with the director, appointed the director, friends with the director's son. So he gets fired, but then he gets rehired. They, like when we was on the show with Katrina Holloway, they end up going on trips together. That's some very, very serious stuff. One more thing I want to put in the context. I remember one time that the DA Tasha Mosley was with a group of people, and a friend of mine was there, and they came back because they thought it was funny. And they said that Tasha made the statement in this group that I am the most powerful woman in this county, and he thought it was funny, and I thought it was funny too. But actually, it's not funny, and actually, there's truth to that. There's truth to that. And let me tell you where I'm going with that. Maybe she's not a powerful person, but that office of DA carries the most power than any office I don't think people understand, but DAs affect public policy. They think legislators do, but DAs do. Let me tell you why. Legislators, they create laws, but someone has to enforce them or prosecute. And we see DAs take those laws and misconstrue them and prosecute people overly or make up crimes, or sometimes they refuse to prosecute, like in situations like this. Either one is worse than the other. But let me tell you how much problems that DAs can cause for society. Think about this. When DAs started prosecuting parents for disciplining their children, and parents became afraid to discipline their children, I'm not saying abuse children, discipline children, we saw a drastic change in society. And parents having unruly kids and they have no way of controlling them. And if they did, they could get a DA like Tasha to prosecute them. When DAs started prosecuting teachers, legislators didn't come up with a new law saying, hey, let's lock up teachers. DAs started doing that. Well, we're going to prosecute them. And so teachers became afraid. And then next thing you look, we're seeing teachers get spit on, kicked, whatever. And God forbid if they defend themselves, because if they get a crazy DA like Tasha or the one we got in Fulton County, they can well find themselves indicted. And then, of course, DAs started prosecuting police officers. Now the police are afraid to do their job. And I'm not saying that none of these three people should be prosecuted. They actually did an actual crime or whatever, but we know how far reaching they can go with this. Just like we saw coaches prosecuted for murder when a child collapsed after running around a track. Am I saying they shouldn't be charged? I can't say yes or no, but we know it's not murder. Murder is malice aforethought. It meant you plan to kill someone. And to charge somebody with that just because you can, or just because you think they'll plead to what they're actually did, is a misuse of it. So DAs, she's right about that. DAs do carry a lot of stuff. And if you look at the things that she's done, and you look at the condition of the crime in this county, you look at the condition of the jail with 5 people murdered, all of that is a domino effect of her either not prosecuting people who should be prosecuted or prosecuting people who shouldn't be prosecuted. So she's right about that. And unfortunately, you get the wrong DA like her, and then you get the mess we get in Clayton County. And now it's totally out of control. 17-year-old shot in the head last night. You and I discussed this. We didn't really get a chance to go to it. I think we did on one of our shows. Another young man shot in the front of Kroger. Another one shot behind Walmart. Another one shot at a skating rink in a car with his mother. 4 shot by First Baptist Church. And all of this is a direct domino effect from what this DA has done and has not done. Something to think about. Meg, you got anything?
I think that anybody that's been affected by the Rainbow House or Tasha Mosley should contact, if it's Tasha Mosley directly, contact the Georgia Bar Association, make a grievance, contact the oversight board with the Georgia ethics committee. That's who's overseeing the district attorney. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a new oversight committee. I forgot the exact name for it, but we'll make sure. Jerome, I'll make sure you get it so you can post it up there. And also, this law firm needs to be contacted. These guys, and I like your idea, Jerome. I think we should reach out to them and see if they'll come on the show. I'd love to have them on the show. These guys are top notch. I read that lawsuit. You read it from beginning to end. They're high speed, and you could tell, and you saw them on there on the TV show. They look like very two bright lawyers. This don't look like some fly by night thing. Speaking of lawsuits, let me say one other thing. When Katrina Holloway was on the show, she was a witness that anyone I would fire would come over and see Jeff Turner, and Jeff Turner would help coordinate a lawsuit. So she was a witness and even named some of the people, saying that, hey, most of the lawsuits filed against Sheriff Victor Hill was coordinated by Jeff Turner. Then Jeff Turner would go out there and tell people he's costing the county money. Look at all these lawsuits. But he's the one actually pushing the lawsuit. And he's the chief fiduciary responsible officer. How much money will this cost when all these children come up, and this ain't no coordinated lawsuit. This is not nothing that we made up. It's one thing to make up a crime on somebody. It's another thing when these are legitimate accusations, which they are. So the man that's been coordinating lawsuits is now at the center of a RICO lawsuit, but not just a lawsuit because he terminated someone, not just a lawsuit because we're trying to figure out if this is against the law or not the law. Children got molested because of him. He had the power to stop it and didn't. The minute he got that complaint, had he picked up the phone and called the police chief and say, hey, get on this right away, he had the power to say, hey, I don't want nobody else going to the center until this is done. I need someone over there right now. But instead, he threw it in the trash can.
Right, silent, and then
a former police chief
down in the trash can. Come on now.
Absolutely.
He knew better. He knew better
at all.
I think Commissioner is saying something, but her thing is on mute.
I'm on mute. But let's not forget, in this case, we couldn't even count on the GBI. The GBI should have been contacted because it was involving a sitting district attorney. Someone asked a question about friends by the current DA. Well, don't forget that there is that judicial board. And yes, she does sit on one of those judicial boards, which allows for people to fraternize, and that's just part of it. I just want to reiterate that the only thing that does my heart just a little bit of solace is that finally those babies are going to feel like somebody heard them. And I said it before, and I said it to some other folks I've had, contact with. Never have justice. They will never have justice. Justice cannot be served for something like that because of what they went through. Not just because of the act, but the fact that those who should be taking care of them swept it under the rug, regardless of these people at all, about what type of folks they are. I think that speaks mounds. You're supposed to be there to protect the children. You have quite a bit of your assistant DAs serving on that board that should be protecting children. And then that's right, mandated reporter, but then you also have the person that was the previous chief of police, whether fire, but the point is, he understands. He's not fly by night in that field. But all of those people are the ones who didn't take care of those children. That is gut wrenching and heartbreaking. And again, I want to make sure people who are listening, this is not hearsay. And I'm going to go ahead and put it out here. There's a computer that should be still housed by the county attorney. I no longer work there. And I pray that these attorneys go back and request it, because the best I could do is only one of 5 was to basically state the law, reiterate the law and our level of responsibilities. So there is a computer that is supposed to be reserved by law by that county attorney. His name is Chuck Reed. And I would hope that somebody goes back and pull that up. I would hope that someone reads every one of those emails and a communication that no one had enough sense to know that you can't erase. You cannot erase. I hope people go back and realize that even in one of the cases, and this is not just Clayton, these kids came from DeKalb. Let's not just let it rest with Clayton. Let's make sure everybody understands the level of responsibility. This was DHS out of DeKalb. This was DHS in other counties, and you saw it in the lawsuit. This is a Georgia problem, and it just happened to be that there's a light shown on the Rainbow House here or in Clayton County. But go back to it. All of these people did not protect these children. All they cared about was covering up their own missteps.
Yes.
And children's lives will never be the same because of that. In DeKalb, they removed the kid out of the home when the judge didn't even sign off for the child to be out of the home. Somebody did not check those records. I thought at first, when I did not see a signature, I thought that, they must be redacting it. That baby had to be returned back to their home. These are the things that go unheard. There's another thing in there. and we're not saying who, but it broke my heart because, you know, when children are feeling misunderstood, they're feeling like they're not heard, they do what they naturally do. We act out. They act out. You know, it's no secret. I talked about my unfortunate experiences as a kid when people did not protect me. So this is not about me, but I say this to say I know this all too well. So that same kid gets labeled as a problem child. And then this is the other part. And then when the officers are responding, as opposed to responding in an unbiased manner, now they're going in because why? Because we have heard from the DA. You got all of this influence that nobody could have been able to look at that situation in an unbiased manner to be able to do what their job states that they should be doing. I agree that who the two people are, but I'm going to tell you something. We failed these babies on many levels. And I have said it without apologizing. The one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that these babies knew that somebody heard them. Somebody listened and somebody believed them. Not because of their status. You said it best, Sandusky. You know, think about how long that cover up went on before finally their backs were against the wall. Think about the persecution. Let's not talk about jail. Think about the persecution these babies went under every day. They have nobody there for them. They are taken away from their parents. They're supposed to be put in a home to where they're having, you know, getting away from abuse. And yet they endure even worse abuse. Let's talk about that. I cannot wait until this case comes up to be heard. I pray to God that people do not drag their feet, because we know that when it comes to lawsuits, because there's some type of influence from others, people like to drag their feet. No, this one don't need to be that way. It doesn't need, while everybody's out here talking about all these other folks, Diddy, you know, and all these other people. Forgive me, Lord, but from what I see, they may be grown folks. I don't know, but these are babies. These are babies, y'all. It breaks my heart.
Yeah. And, you know, well said, well said. And, you know, not just the lies that was already told, but, you know, Commissioner, you weren't on it when the DA told the media. Of course, she told them from the shadow. She didn't go on camera, that she wasn't on the board then. And also she lied about
that.
You mentioned it, right? But also she also said something to the effect about the board not having oversight to the level that it would involve her. And that's not true. That's a lie too.
Oh,
So,
that's a
you know,
back lie. Because
exactly.
she actually, that board hired the person to be in there. There's no one else that hires them.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So you got a situation where, okay, not only was it covered up, but she's still lying to cover it up. And, you know, we had this conversation before you came on, how you would think as a trained attorney, she would have known to shut up. Maybe she needs to get something, she's not a decent attorney to represent her. But the thing about it is, you already see this line continue to go on. And then you also got this Mia Kimber thing where all of a sudden she's charged with all these charges. Her son is serving a 30-year sentence, but all of a sudden she's supposed to go before state court to plead to a misdemeanor, perhaps. Where did this misdemeanor charge come from? And no doubt it was Tasha's attempt to get her to plead to a misdemeanor and ease her out the door. Because one tactic that a lot of these DAs do is, if it's somebody they don't want to prosecute, they let time and dust bill on the case when they think no one's watching and listening anymore. And then they kind of ease it into the courthouse one day. And then that person gets to plead out, or they just administratively dismiss it. But she tried it this time and it got caught. So it's very, very interesting to see how this is going to play out. One thing we talked about before you came on is what we're hoping is that now that there's a new administration, that they take a look at this, and that we hope that the same thing happened with Diddy, where it was a lawsuit at first, and then the feds came in and got involved when they saw what was going on. because again, we're dealing with a situation. We're not dealing with adults here. We're dealing with children who can't give consent, can't legally give consent. So this right here is a scandal that is so much more egregious and bigger than anything we saw with Diddy, because it's involving children, and not just children, but like you so articulately said, excuse my pronunciation, children that are at a shelter where they should have been protected because they were already being abused or something was going on.
That's
And then, right, and then
That's
they
the
go
point.
to
They were
a
ward
shelter.
of the state.
Absolutely.
Yes. Not only could they not give consent because of age, but all of their rights were taken away from their parents. All of their rights were taken away from them. And you know how children can even file at certain times and ages for what do they call it, where they have sovereignty over their decisions. Well, now they're locked up in this place and in this space, and they have no free will. They have no rights at all. So I think that's what makes it worse, is the fact that they were wards of the state. See, that's the part we got to get to. It's not just on the county level. So on the county level, you have those who were officers of the state, because that's what you have to remember. The DA is an officer of the state, but you had those who were officers of the state who did not do their job. But the state is also responsible because they too have been shown within this lawsuit of their perpetualness of not doing their job. Now, I don't leave this one person out, because again, I want to make sure that everybody that had a hand of pushing it forward. There's an election coming up for John Ossoff, and I want to ask him this question: at what point did you decide that, even though you were over this oversight committee, that you weren't going to push it forward? Was it because somebody had a conversation with you about the DA? What was the reasoning? See, that's what we have to look at, is the reach of these people, the reach of them and their level of influence, and denying these children of their rights. And I do believe they have a solid case. They have a solid case because of the perpetualness of just consistently. These folks didn't even pass with a 50. All of these centers barely got a 30, and they were all fined. Let's remember this. They all received fines. They all received penalties, but yet and still they were able to continue to operate under the state of Georgia. So that's an issue alone. And then you take it a step further. And then the other thing that I read, they're talking about 2,000 children that are missing and 400 which they know are sex trafficked. So let me go to that. I don't know if we talked about it the last time, but I want to make sure this is stated. When I read what I read as a commissioner, because as a commissioner, we had sole responsibility to be able to direct funding throughout the entire county. And I was first told we have no jurisdiction over that funding. And I was like, no, that's not true. Because they receive, as you said, Jerome, state, federal, and local funding, right? So then I started asking some questions. And at first I was met with, oh no, we don't have any issues with that. And that's a nonprofit. We can't pull that information up. We have no jurisdiction over it. If it was not for me requesting that information, which I'm responsible to do, and let's talk about all the other commissioners, because they were responsible to do it too. We ain't leaving nobody out. None of this would have been able to come to pass. So when someone says, why is it coming out so quickly? Because it don't matter what seat you have. It don't matter whether you're the DA. It doesn't matter whether you were the previous chairman. It don't matter if somebody want to name a street after you. What you cannot refute is what is in writing. You can't refute that in writing. You can't refute the fact that you were aware and that you were on the board when you all hired these folks. You can't refute that. You could say that in a newspaper all you want to. But I could tell you, these folks, as even Sheriff Hill said, they're not fly by night. So these people here need to be very, very careful and understand they're done. They're done. And I've already said, until the last breath is in my body, I'm gonna make sure those babies knew that they were heard.
Yeah. Wow. It's just sad, and you know,
it is.
And to see some type of dedication like this on the 28th, I really hope that there is a reconsideration by the state senator. First of all, state senators have, you know, they should have a group of people around them that knows how to advise them, and their advisors severely
We hope.
let them down. So, I don't know who they had around them, but that was terrible.
Actually, I hope they go through with it. I hope every person that's
Mhm.
ever been molested, every person that has a child that's ever been molested, every person that's an advocate for kids show up at that,
Mhm.
since we know he should be there,
Mhm.
and let them know their disdain for the fact that a former police chief and a former chairman had knowledge that kids were being molested and covered it up and didn't do anything about it because of the relationship with the DA.
Yeah.
I hope every child advocacy person there is show up that day. Right.
Yeah, I can see that.
And yeah. Go right ahead and do that, because this
Mhm.
is one of the most. This has got to be probably the most atrocious thing that's happened in the history of Clayton County. It
Or
already
better yet,
has
just serve them with
issues.
the lawsuit there. Just do it. Serve them with the lawsuit there. You know,
That's
serve them
that's not a
again.
that's not a bad idea.
I
That's not a
laugh,
bad
but I'm
idea
not
either.
laughing. I just,
Yeah.
and I do want to mention this. Don't forget, as we discussed before, this was brought before not only the GBI, which the GBI, I'm gonna say this, I don't know if they're worth a whole lot in the state of Georgia, bless their hearts. Um, the and bless your hearts for the good, with the good officers. I'm just stating the experiences I've had, and the fact that it is so politicized, and the means and the way that the GBI turns their eye. You talked about FBI. Let's not forget that the FBI are those who are appointed within the county, and the county pays their salaries. And those are the same folks who work for the current DA. And I know for a fact, she told me several times that the FBI loves her. So you know what? I guess because they love her, they ignored it as well. So now we're going to go a step further. Because I was not getting any traction at all, call Homeland Security. And what breaks my heart is now we know, not only within the lawsuit, 400 children were trafficked, but also I read and I knew that kids were trafficked, and they're going to run away from it. So I just really hope that there's some light shed on this. I hope that the news media would back up and stop jumping on the stories that absolutely make no sense at all, and really at least make sure that the public understands that these people need to be held accountable. That's the key to it. And it has systematically, it has to stop. It has to stop. There's
Let,
no other way.
let me say this. There may be hope. Remember, I do remember you recalling you saying that Tasha told you that the FBI likes her or whatever. But keep in
Mhm.
mind, that was the FBI that was under another FBI director, and that was the FBI that was under another U.S. attorney. There's a new FBI director now. There's a new U.S. attorney, and I get this strange feeling they're not too fond of silly DAs like her and the other one we got. So look,
Mm.
keep hope alive, because I don't think they're going to be as turning another eye or forgiving for a DA that covers up kids being molested. So just something to think about.
It's
We
sad.
will wait and see. We don't know, but remember, it was different directors there, and as we know, everything rises and falls on leadership. The reason this was even happened is because we had bad leaders. We had a
Right.
DA that's a bad leader, a chairman that's a bad leader. Because if they were good leaders, it would have stopped. Let me just say this: it wouldn't have stopped. It would have never happened. If there was a
Hmm.
real DA that sat on that board, there is no way that they would have allowed the director and her son to do this. There's no
Correct.
way they would have went on a trip with them. They would have been terrified to even look at a child wrong if there was a real DA there.
Right. They would have
But
championed
because
their cause, but
Oh
this
yeah.
right,
woman didn't.
exactly, everything rises and falls on leadership. You could tell a lot about that. There are a lot of things that just don't happen when certain people are in charge, because people know better. But when you
Hmm.
got the Fox Garden and Hen House, when you got lackluster leaders like this that don't have any moral turpitude, for lack of a better term, this is what
Hmm.
we get. And Clayton deserves better.
And
Yeah.
also, I've got to head out, guys, but I just hope people keep these children in prayer. Of course, by law, you wouldn't know their names, which we wouldn't. But I want us to stay focused on the children. Keep them in prayer. Some of the things
Well,
that they have endured, oh my goodness, let me go back to this too. We have this thing called a victims fund, but over the years, where's this victims fund gone to? These children are going to need more support than ever before, just to be able to have a chance at a minimum or a decent life. A decent life. Because let's be real about it, trauma is already real. But now you got the layers, as I've been saying over and over again, of those who should be keeping them safe. That's a whole nother level of trauma, whole nother level of distrust. So keep these babies in prayer. And I honestly pray that everything comes to light and is uncovered to the point to where, you know what? These two will just go turn themselves on in.
At this point.
I agree. I want to thank you for coming on. Meg had to leave. I know you have to leave.
Yes.
I think y'all both brought a great perspective to this. You know, this is a sad situation, and
It
you said
is. It
something.
is.
You said something that reminds me of something somebody once told me. They said, if you're a victim of something and the person killed that person, that's horrible. That's considered the highest crime. But at the moment that person died, their suffering stopped. But when you molest a child and that child lives, their suffering goes on for the rest of their lives.
Mhm.
Yes.
And I think what the commissioner
Yes.
said that was really profound to me is not just the trauma of what happened,
Yep.
but there's a lot of people I think in this traumatized. Two women were arrested that actually reported it, but they were arrested for not reporting it. Think about that. A woman named
Mhm.
Felicia Campbell made a police report, but was arrested for not reporting it. But yet the people that really didn't report it have gone unchecked until now.
Mhm.
So think about the fact that
Yeah.
everyone involved in this not only has to deal with the trauma of what happened, but they have to deal with the trauma of knowing that the people that you're supposed to call, the people who're supposed to come to your rescue, the people who're supposed to protect you, didn't.
Yep.
And to this day, they continue to try and deny it. They're not going to be able to do it anymore because thanks to this law firm, these things are getting ready to get unraveled. But to this day, this long, this went on because the people we're supposed to depend on, the former
Mhm.
police chief, the chairman, the DA, those who, okay, hey, something is wrong, let's go. These are our rescuers. They weren't the rescuers, they were the perpetrators. They were a part of it.
And we're
If
talking
that's
about
not
were.
traumatizing, what is? Right.
Right. You're talking about were, but think about now, God forbid, they end up in another situation. And it's all this whole Stockholm syndrome because, of course, they've gone through this much abuse and not being able to trust anybody. So how is that going to affect them when it come time for them to call for help then? See, we're talking about the now, but even in the future, these children's lives are forever changed. Their thought process is forever changed. They weren't allowed to develop as children. And so, like you mentioned, and I like that you said the fact that, I've had friends, unfortunately, who've lost loved ones, and I've lost loved ones. And the suffering for that individual does, they're gone on. But the suffering for those who go through that type of abuse never goes away. And again, if nothing more than for those around us, you all, Meg, who the attorneys, to be that voice for these babies. And I say babies on purpose because somebody should have been taking care of them. Then I feel like it, at least we've done that what we could do. But their lives will never be
A-
the same.
Absolutely. Jerome, before you take over, I just want to say this. We just had someone come on and say that Governor Kemp's wife is at the forefront of this stuff. Maybe we should get her involved when it comes to human trafficking and stuff like that. We got this oversight for DAs. There is PAC, which oddly enough, Tasha Mosley was in charge of PAC. How that happened, I don't know. They're gonna have to
That's what I
probably.
mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned it. That's something. And she actually lobbied down at the state house to stop them from creating a board to overlook DAs like her. Can you imagine?
Hmm.
But I want to encourage everyone. My understanding is there's already witnesses and victims that since this lawsuit is filed have started to come forward. I've heard that through the grapevine. I believe that source is accurate. There's more out there. And everyone needs to contact this oversight committee. Everybody needs to get in touch with this law firm. Jerome, I think that's a great idea. I think we need to reach out to this law firm and see if they'll come on the show and give us some insight on what they can give us about what's going on. And this is really a bad day for Clayton County, because right now Clayton County is in the hands of Tasha Mosley, a woman who covered up a child molestation case. What does that mean for the victims that depend on her for her case? Can they only depend on her as long as the people who did something to them aren't her friends or aren't friends of hers? What about the people who she handles their case and it's not being handled correctly, or it's being handled maliciously because they're not on her list of friends?
Right.
So hopefully there's going to be
Or the
some
cases they
intervention.
can't even address now because those ADAs who were on that board are now conflicted out.
That's true. That's true.
That's the other issue. There are emails where they don't know what to do. So right now, as far as I know, in the county, there's not a CSEC is an area where they do the investigations for children who are deemed to have been, have gone through some type of sexual molestation or rape. Now, where is the CSEC program in Clayton? Who's providing that now? So I don't know.
We're at the point now, after reading this lawsuit, that Clayton County doesn't need a new district attorney at the next election. They need something now. And hopefully with everybody coming forward and hopefully these things are taken to the oversight committee, hopefully that can happen sooner than later, because Clayton County deserves better than this.
And shame on the state of Georgia if they allow her to continue to operate knowing that this lawsuit is out there and it's of this concerning nature. Shame on the state of Georgia. Shame on the state of Georgia if they allow that to continue to happen.
Jerome?
And I know what you said about the governor's wife, but at the end of the day, people can hold a post. But I can tell you that this was put on the desk of a lot of folks, including Chris Carr, personally taken to him. And so the state is aware. But you know what? Shame on them if they let her continue to be in that office. I think they ended up suspending you, unfortunately. And, we got to have standards. There's a suspension that should occur at least until this is done. At least at minimum.
Well said. Well said. Jerome, can you bring us home?
Yeah. Well, that's going to be it for this episode of Live of Hill of Justice. If this story moved you or made you think or sparked the conversation, please do us a favor and subscribe, and drop a comment below. We do want to hear from you, and many of you were able to go ahead and chat with us the whole time through, and we really appreciate that. So, just hit the notification bell and join us next time. There's going to be more to come, and we're going to go ahead and Keith and I will go ahead and do our best to see if we can go ahead and get these attorneys on here that speak about this matter. But until then, stay safe and just stay aware, and we'll be back later. Take care, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Commissioner.
Oh, my pleasure.